Forgive me, I have to read my statement in English for the international community. On this date, 66 years ago, in Tibet's capital, Lhasa, Tibetans from all three provinces unitedly rose up against the illegal occupation of Tibet and China's brutal, inhuman policies and practices in Tibet. Under the violent suppression of Chinese forces, over 1 million Tibetans lost their precious lives and compelled the legitimate Tibetan government, led by His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama, followed by approximately 80,000 Tibetans, into exile. This marks the darkest and most crucial or critical period in the history of Tibet. As we commemorate the Tibetan National Uprising Day, we honor our brave martyrs and express solidarity with our brothers and sisters inside Tibet who continue to languish under the oppressive Chinese government. In these past 65 years and more so today, under the current Chinese leadership, a deliberate and dangerous strategy to eliminate the very identity of the Tibetan people as a unique human race is clearly evident. Under the pretext of strengthening the consciousness of Chinese national unity, and the Chinese government is implementing extensive sinicization policies that is resulting in the gradual annihilation of Tibetans' identity and deprivation of the fundamental human rights of the Tibetan people. Furthermore, under its sinicization campaign, large-scale restrictions are imposed in the monasteries with complete denial of freedom of religion, and over 1 million young Tibetan children have been forcibly enrolled in colonial-style boarding schools across Tibet. Under the guise of promoting the national common language, the use and teaching of Tibetan language is severely restricted. The Chinese government's unchecked mining and construction projects have irrevocably caused extensive damage to Tibet's natural environment with severe implications far beyond its borders. All these acts and practices of China defies not only international and domestic laws, but even the basic human values. Tibetans, nurtured by the far-sighted vision and unwavering compassion of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, have not harbored hatred or animosity towards the Chinese Communist government that has occupied our homeland and caused the untimely death of more than 1.2 million Tibetans and destruction of over 6,000 monasteries. As envisioned by His Holiness, Tibetan people remain committed to the path of nonviolence and dialogue in finding a lasting and mutually beneficial solution to resolve the Sino-Tibet conflict through the middle way approach. It also reaffirms our confidence that the Tibetan people, the rightful custodians of the Tibetan plateau since its formation, embody unique religious and cultural traditions that cannot be erased, an indomitable spirit that cannot be broken, and an unparalleled leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama that cannot be replaced. The Kashak's official statements last year on His Holiness' birthday, Tibetan Democracy Day, and the conferment day of Nobel Peace Prize to His Holiness the Dalai Lama briefly highlighted the 3 out of 4 principal commitments. On this occasion, the Kasha would like to highlight on His Holiness' 4th commitment, which is to revive the ancient Indian wisdom. After His Holiness the Dalai Lama devolved his political powers to the elected leaders, His Holiness began to focus more on his 4th commitment, which includes revival of the ancient Indian wisdom. The revival of ancient Indian wisdom is not on simply reviving a particular religion or religious tradition. Rather, His Holiness considers the importance of balancing external material progress with inner spiritual growth based on ancient wisdom. His Holiness believes that Tibetans who have safeguarded and practiced this knowledge for generations can contribute to this revival as an act of gratitude towards India. Tibetan language has preserved extensive collections of ancient Indian knowledge, both in quantity and quality that is unmatched in any other language. Approximately 5,000 Indian classical texts have been translated into Tibetan, the result of dedicated efforts by Indian and Tibetan scholars and translators over many centuries. These include the five major sciences: grammar, Tibetan medicine, arts, Buddhist logic, and Buddhist philosophy, which are the five major sciences, and as well as five minor sciences: poetry, performing arts, lexicography, composition, mathematics, and astrology, comprising 10 fields of knowledge. There are not only a large number of translated texts, but Tibetan scholars have also written extensive commentaries on these works. It is well known that His Holiness the Dalai Lama does not seek to propagate Buddhism. The essence of Buddhism is studied in three categories: Buddhist religion, Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhist science. Since the 1980s, His Holiness has initiated 38 dialogues with modern scientists on the later two categories. This has significantly influenced scientific discussions on psychology, human values, neuroscience, and other fields. These dialogues have greatly influenced scientific discussions around the world and enhanced the revival of the ancient Indian wisdom. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's efforts towards the revival of ancient wisdom has impacted, including analytical thinking based on logic, and introduced C-learning, social, emotional, and ethical learning were introduced and implemented in more than 170 countries, including in 100,000 schools across India. The Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Varanasi, has published about 355 books, including 80 works restored from Tibetan to Sanskrit, a 16-volume Tibetan Sanskrit dictionary, a 4-volume medical dictionary, and has trained over 1,000 students from the Himalayan region. The Dalai Lama Institute for Higher Education in Bangalore provides education in Tibetan students and various modern subjects, primarily in Tibetan and Himalayan students. Sara College for Higher Tibetan Studies provides one-year courses in Buddhist logic, secular ethics, Buddhist science and philosophy to not only Tibetan and Indian students, but also to foreign students. The Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala conducts Tibetan language classes and 6-year Buddhist studies programs and science workshops. Similarly, the International Nalanda University program at Tibet House, Delhi, has been attended by over 6,000 students from 91 countries through its degree programs and short-term training courses. There are a number of Tibetan Buddhist centers around the world serving Buddha Dharma, and the offices of Tibet under the Central Tibetan Administration coordinates and works closely towards fulfillment of the commitments of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Since the 1980s, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has repeatedly advised the Tibetan monastic institution in exile to study modern science and instructed Tibetan schools to incorporate logical reasoning in their curriculum. The Department of Religion and Culture and the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives continue to organize training programs for science teachers in monasteries. Various collaborative projects have been initiated between monasteries and Indian universities. Tibetan schools maintain a policy of providing education in both traditional and modern subjects through the Tibetan language. The results of training thousands of monks, nuns, and students from the Himalayan region in Tibetan monasteries and schools in exile are now visible from India's border regions to prestigious international platforms. His Holiness the Dalai Lama assigned special responsibilities to his close associates and monastic scholars, resulting in the successful compilation and publication of the 12-part compilation of Buddhist science and the 9-part compilation of Buddhist philosophy. These works are being translated into English and other languages. For reviving ancient Indo-Tibetan philosophical and Buddhist traditions, the Dalai Lama Institute for Indian and Ancient Wisdom is being established at the sacred site of Bodh Gaya, open to interested people worldwide. These are just some examples of the efforts to revive ancient Indian culture. His Holiness the Dalai Lama's mission of promoting human values, global religious harmony, preservation of the Tibetan religion and culture, and revival of ancient Indian wisdom are interconnected at its core. These commitments transcend the boundaries of specific national and ethnic interests, striving to create a compassionate society and peaceful world for all humanity. Karl Marx maintained that oppressed nationalities have the right to self-determination, and he opposed national oppression, national exploitation, while criticizing nationalism. However, the Chinese Communist Party has turned its back on its founders' ideology and forcibly imposed a fabricated concept of Chinese nationhood on all ethnic groups, including the Tibetan people. Tibetans are politically treated as lower-class citizens, requiring constant surveillance in all their activities, day and night. Tibetan children are forced to learn Tibetan language, Chinese language, and communist ideology. And Tibetan Buddhism is being cynicized. These policies contradict Marxist principles and violate international laws, while the communist regime continues to inflict irreparable damage to the historical friendship between Tibetan and Chinese peoples. According to Western calendar, His Holiness the Dalai Lama turns 90 this year. As announced earlier by the Central Tibetan Administration, the year will be celebrated as the Year of Compassion internationally. The essence of this celebration is to learn, to practice, and to promote the 4 commitments of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The best way to address Tibet's immediate and long-term challenges for us Tibetans is to understand and follow the path shown by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The indomitable spirit of Tibetans inside Tibet is the foundation of Tibetan people's aspiration, which inspires and strengthens their determination and commitment of the Tibetans in exile. We must face all the challenges confronting us with courage and in unity under the benevolent leadership of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. The Kashak would like to take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to governments, including the Government of India, organizations and individuals who have supported the Tibetan cause and welfare of the Tibetan community. In conclusion, we earnestly pray for the long life of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. May the truth of Tibet prevail.
Touché en conseguant